Look at the camera. Okay, so all right. So I'm Christina Sharpe. I'm a professor of English at Tufts University, and I'm also a professor of Africana, women's gender and sexuality studies there. I first saw Killer of Sheep probably in 1991 when Charles Burnett came to Cornell, which is where I was doing my PhD, and he brought Killer of Sheep along with The Glass Shield. And I think also To Sleep with Anger. So I think it was kind of a retrospective of Charles Burnett's work. I hadn't at that point seen any of his work. So it was thrilling to have him screen those three films. My real lasting memory of Killer of Sheep from that moment was really just a scene of the Avatar. I didn't remember that much more about it. I did really enjoy seeing the three films, and it was again my exposure to Black independent filmmaking, and in particular the LA Rebellion filmmakers, because I had seen Daughters of the Dust, and I had seen other work by Julie Dash, and so it was really wonderful to hear Burnett speak about his filmmaking process and the work that these films were doing. Many years later, I saw Killer of Sheep again, probably when it was reissued, and I have it on DVD, and I actually teach the work fairly regularly. And I think seeing it now after having written In the Wake, it's quite a different experience. It's like one of my favorite books, one of my favorite films. Every time I watch it, I land on something new. I've always really loved the scenes with the children, and in particular Angie, and I don't know the little boy's name when she has on the dog mask. But this time watching it, most recently, I was really sort of tracking all of the children playing in the film. I'll come back to that in a minute, but one of the other moments that I really love is the moment when Stanley is talking to his friend, and he's asking him, he puts the teacup to his face, and he asks his friend to put the teacup to his face, and he asks him what it feels like. Doesn't it remind him of a woman's forehead when they're making love? And the friend is kind of silent, and then he laughs and says, well, I don't go after women with malaria. And then there's this laughter. But I think that's such a beautiful scene about tenderness and about Stanley, who's so completely alienated from his wife, not so much from his children in a certain way, but really from his body, except when he's in the abattoir. That it's this beautiful scene that tries to get at something about searching for tenderness in the midst of brutality, that I really love. And then thinking about the children, because In the Wake, I've tried to think about what I call anagrammatical blackness and the ways in which the word boy and girl don't seem to affix to Black children in the context, certainly of the US, but also I think globally. I was really so struck by the children this time. So like even when the little boys in the very beginning are moving through the kind of wasteland in the aftermath of the Watts rebellion, and they're throwing, they've got those like the wood that they're using as shields, and they're throwing gravel at each other, and they could really hurt each other. When one of the little boys is hurt, they all stop and they run to him and they say, are you okay, man? Are you okay? Like, don't you see he's hurt? Don't you see he's hurt? And then they pick him up and they look at it and they're like, oh, you're all right. And then they keep going. So even though it looks, it's harsh, and it's still at the moment at which somebody is actually hurt, they stop, and it's this, this care. So it's play. It's not, so you really see it as play, even though it's play that's in the midst of, ruin and the possibility of real hurt. And then just to go back to the little girl, Angie, with the mask on, I mean, just how you just don't see Black children rendered so completely lovingly. It's such a lovely look. And it's such a long look, You know, the little boy calls her, and she comes running out of the house. She runs down the stairs, and then they're leaning on the fence, and you can hear the fence creaking because she's holding onto the fence, and there's the noise of the fence creaking. And then she's got that mask on, and she has her fist in the mouth. It's just a completely beautiful, like a breathtaking, breath-giving scene. So I think that's, but I also think that it depends on who's watching it and who sees what. And so one time when I thought I would teach Killer of Sheep, but I wasn't certain how it was going to go, I just showed a trailer and I let that determine whether I would actually teach it. And one of the responses in the class from a white student in the class was that it looked like The Little Rascals. There's nothing about this film that resembles The Little Rascals. Which is and so then I decided that I would not show the film because I did not think that their eyes were ready for it, and that there wasn't at that point enough time in the semester to try to change that, right? You know, Tony K. Bambara says about Daughters of the Dust that it's a film that tries to, quote, heal our imperialized eyes. And I think that whatever kind of decolonization needed to happen for some other image to emerge for that class wasn't going to happen in that space of time. So, but certainly when I look at the film, you know, I see devastating circumstances and I see life in the middle of that, and humor and love and pain as well, but certainly not just pain, certainly not just abandonment, much, much more than that. Looking at it, I also see my own childhood in certain ways. Like, there are parts of the film that make me, many parts of the film that make me laugh out loud. Like when the little girls are playing, they're doing the bump and they're singing a song, and the little boy rides up on his bike, and you know, there's also obviously some long-standing, you know, back and forth that they have with all the children in the community. And basically they knock his bike down, they chase him away, and he runs off crying. Like, you know, that just made me laugh, because just thinking about the games we played and the ways we made each other cry and then comforted each other as children. So I don't see that as sort of meanness or abandonment. It actually brings me back to certain feeling of my own childhood. I mean, I grew up in a mainly white suburb in Philadelphia, in the suburbs of Philadelphia, but I grew up in a Black community in this mainly white suburb. Well, we're also in the midst of so much, particularly perhaps in the context of the U.S., the murders by police of so many young Black people, boys and girls. But also in the context of the world, sort of globally, the sort of abuse and terrorizing of so many Black people, young, across age, but young people. So one of my big hopes would be seeing the film to actually see these children, to actually see Black children as children, and to actually see some of the joy, struggle, and their just being children. But also to see the series of relationships in the film, to sort of enter into the film and the life of the film, and to see people sort of living and trying to love and to reconnect and work in the midst of so many forces arrayed against them, and to see the real beauty, to see and hear the beauty of the film. Both the sort of moments of the music that are diegetic, but that are also kind of extra diegetic. So sometimes you begin with the children singing, and then you go into Paul Robeson singing the same song, and just the way that the music moves you through the film, but also moves you in the way that the images of children, again in particular, really move you. I would like that to become really apparent to a contemporary audience, a contemporary younger audience.